All right, I've got an excellent tutorial for you today on Finviz. It's going to help you whether you're a value investor, even if you're a growth investor or a day trader. This will help you a lot. I'm going to go over some key features, some stuff that's really going to save you some time, stuff that people who maybe use it aren't aware that it's in there, and it can help you with back testing, for example. Can help you if you're using the screener every single month, show you a shortcut so you're not starting over and over again, and a few other things as well. So I had a YouTube subscriber ask me a question, sent me in an email, and he was having trouble with the screener as far as finding a good list. I used the screener in this video here, the Peter Lynch stocks list, and I showed basically how to use some filters and how I use those filters to find stocks that Peter Lynch would buy. And so, using that and applying it to other value investors like Lynch or Graham, sometimes you can have some issues, and I've definitely seen that. So I'm going to talk about that kind of in depth and really help you so it's not something that you'll get stuck with, right? It can be somewhat troublesome if you're trying to use a stock screener like Finviz. Could be a big hiccup. So I'm going to knock that off, get that fixed for any of you trying to use Finviz. If it's your first time using Finviz, this will also be a very helpful tutorial for you. And it's going to be something where you can learn some things to really save yourself time and get the kind of information you want faster and more efficiently. I've been using Finviz for years, so these are just some of the features, the many features you can use, and it's obviously just a fantastic resource. So we'll go ahead and pull up Finviz, and I'm gonna try to kind of assume that you can figure it out on your own. I won't go like super in depth 101, so we won't take too much time there, but I will try to help you if you're at that point. So basically there's 3 tabs: descriptive, fundamental, technical, and all. Each one's going to let you narrow down this list. Right now on Finviz, they have 7,419 stocks to choose from. So for example, if you've never used Finviz before, let's say you want stocks and you want all the stocks that have a PE under 25. You just simply click here and it's going to filter all that out for you. If you want more specifics and want to kind of run this screen for like value investors, fundamental analysis, if you're any sort of beginner, I have a ton of tutorials where I'm always using Finviz. This video here, the Peter Lynch stock list, that's a great one where I really show, and I go through as I'm going through each metric, kind of explain why and where. And a lot of my other tutorials will use Finviz a lot of the time, especially when I talk about finding ideas. So that's definitely something to go check out if you want help on that aspect of Finviz. But I'm gonna assume the rest of us who want to figure out kind of like these tips and tricks and some features that aren't well known, and those of us that are maybe having some difficulties, this should help walk you through and get through some of that. So the first feature I'm going to tell you about is, and this is super helpful, really helps out if you're trying to, if you're running screens every single month, and if you tend to have similar screens, then this can be super, super helpful. So I'm just going to run a basic screen and just kind of show you right away what you can do with it. First off, I am logged in here. So you want to make sure you log in, create an account to be able to use some of these features that I'm going to show in this video today. Make sure you have an account to do that, and it's free. Put in your email and get a login. So let's say I want to look at, I don't know, the Dow Jones, and let's say we want to look at, let's say a price to earnings under 35, and let's say we also want to go on the technical side, and I'm not saying that this is a screen that I would necessarily do, but let's just say we want to find the stocks that are down year to date. I mean, you can see there's a lot of technical different screens that you can run as well. If you like to look at 52-week highs, 52-week lows, stuff like that. Year down and year to date down is going to be different too. So, okay. So these are the 15 Dow Jones stocks that as of May 2018 have gone down and have like a low PE. So you see how I did that right there. Now, let's say that this is a screen that we are planning to run every single month. Because as the days go on, these stocks, you might run this a month from now. You'll see generally the same names, but some of them might fall in and out. And so when you're trying to find new ideas every month, it's great to be able to run the same screen, and then you can quickly kind of identify when one kind of fits in that parameter, and then that's where you can see an opportunity and one that you haven't seen before, right? If it now is in your screen and it wasn't before. So what you can do here with Finviz is you can actually save this screen, and then you can just run it real quick in the future. So, it doesn't seem like it would save that much time, right? But I only use 3 metrics. Like, you could go and we could be narrowing this down, and we could be talking about, stocks with a beta under 1, and now we have 4 metrics, right? And then let's say we want EPS growth this year to be positive. Now you have 5 metrics, and you don't want to have to click through every single time when you can be spending more of that time researching the actual fundamentals of a stock. So let's say I want to run this 5-part screen every single time, every single month. I want to do it quickly. So what you can do here is you can save the screen. You can see I have a bunch of screens saved, but let's just call this my YouTube Finviz tutorial. And you're going to go here and save changes. So now let's completely exit out, and then let me go back in and show you that instead of having to start over and having to pick all those metrics every single time, we can just click here, right here, my presets, the same place where we saved the screen, the same place you can edit screens, and you can just click here, and now we have, look at that, all 5, and we have that list, boom, right away. It's really, really nice. Oh, I didn't even know about this feature. This is even nicer, right? We can look at everything instead of having to click through the tabs. Cool. I learned something today too. Awesome. Only took me 4 or 5 years. The next feature that's really, really helpful, and I kind of showed this in one of the other tutorials, but it was a dividend tutorial. So I'm figuring that a lot of you who might be searching this up, trying to find Finviz tips, probably haven't seen my dividend tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and show you. And, if you're a value investor and you're not getting into dividends, I really, really think you totally should. It's going to be, that's how Buffett built his wealth, right? He had a bunch of stocks that paid dividends and dividends that grew over time, and, compounded wealth not only in the share price, but with the dividends. And you can do something like this. Consecutive. I don't know why I'm not able to find this right now. Obviously, I'm not very good at. There we go. Multitasking. Okay. So this is a really cool, dividend.com makes this really cool list. I like to look at 10-year, dividend track record with 10 plus or more years. And it can give you, this is a fantastic list to start from, right? But you don't want to have to go through and click through. And, like most screeners, I don't know any screener really at this point that does it, where it will give you dividend growth. We have fundamentals stuff here. We have EPS growth, stuff like that, but not anything about the dividend, and not anything about how many years they've grown it. And I know at least as far as it comes with free screeners, there aren't any out there in the market that do that for us. So it's like, well, you kind of have to pick or choose, right? Do I want to go value investing or do I want to go dividend growth? But I'm going to show you it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. So this is a little hack that I use on dividend.com too, because they want you to pay for this info. Like at least pay to be able to access it, right? So what I like to do instead is I just copy paste it into a Google Sheet, and Google Sheet will actually separate it into the different columns, whereas like Excel doesn't do that. So if we're copy pasting this, and For whatever reason, it's really slow today. Okay, there we go. So you can see this whole A column is going to have every single ticker symbol that we want. Now, what you can do with Finviz, which is really cool, is, instead of having to put, because we don't have a dividend growth feature here, well, we can copy paste the tickers into here. And now we have that whole list that we were looking at here. 203 stocks that have grown their dividend at least once for the last 10 years. And now you can kind of take this list and go further, right? Like you can, now let's say I want to do, again, the price to earnings thing. And let's say I want to have growth for this year to be at least 5%. Now, that narrowed it down to about half of these stocks. And so now you can implement dividend investing with a stock screener, and that's very, very helpful. And, we can save the screen and go back to it and use it month after month after month. So I want to show you a couple of the other features in here. I'm going to use, because Apple's been in the news lately with Buffett adding shares, and then their stock prices kind of blew up a little bit. So let's talk about Apple, and let me show you some of the things you can do inside of Finviz that you might not get if you're just trying to use the screener on its own as a screener. So what is really cool, let's say, obviously if you haven't used it before, you click on the tickers. You can go in here and like click on the ticker in there, and it's going to give you like a general overview of the stock, and you get like all of the basic metrics, the kind of the summary. You can see it's very nice to be able to look at all this, and it can be a good precursor to actually getting down and getting into the actual annual report. But you got like price to earnings, price to sales, book, all the technical stuff's in here too. What was their 52-week high? What was their 52-week low? Obviously, you have the trend lines for technical analysis. And what's really cool is down here, you can look at what the insiders have been doing. Now, you always want to take kind of insider trading with a grain of salt, right? Because we don't know what these guys' lives are like. We don't know if, are they just selling every single time they get a stock option? There's people that are like that, even if they're good kind of insiders, right? Quote unquote. Or just because somebody's selling their stock doesn't necessarily mean they're not aligning their interests with shareholders. But, it can be kind of interesting when you see a lot of sells or when you see a lot of buys. It kind of gives you a temperature with how the insiders are kind of viewing the stock. And if that's something that's important to you, then that's something that can be useful that you can check right away. They also have the analysts and how they are kind of viewing the stock. I don't use this stuff, but you can see they have upgrades, downgrades, and they have whatever company issued the analyst update. So that's kind of cool. Insider trading, insider ownership is going to be here. So, insider ownership, institutional ownership. Institutional ownership is telling you like how many hedge funds, mutual funds own it. So you can see it's the hedge and mutual funds who have the majority control of Apple. Not to say that like one hedge fund does it, and you can kind of look it up to see to what extent that is. But, it's not the general public having like that. What the hedge fund world or the mutual fund world is probably going to influence any sort of proxy vote more so than like a single player kind of a thing, which I guess it tends to be that way anyway, but something that can be sort of useful, maybe not. And then, this gives you like a numerical value for what we were talking about down here. If this is a stock that's brand new, you know nothing about it. I like the summary part down here. They just kind of tell you what the business is about, what they do. You can see they're talking about Apple's iTunes, their app store. Talk about the iOS, all that stuff. That's all in there. And then this is like news, right? What kind of news comes out? So this isn't showing. They are all over the news. Look at that, one day of news and all those headlines. But like if you look at another sort of stock, like a smaller stock, right? And I apologize. I do not know why my internet's so slow today. I kind of just turn on the computer, hit record, and that's what we're doing. So like, for example, this one, you can see how there's going to be movements based on, like, if there's a big move and then there's a news article that was attached to it, then that's going to show up. So sometimes, not to say that this should necessarily be a part of your analysis as a value investor, but if you're ever curious, like, why did the stock fall so much, you can use this stuff in here to look and see, okay, well, it looks like on the 30th, there's this big move. So I'm going to read through some of these headlines and maybe I can click through to an article and see what was going on. And you can see, like, here they lost 5%. And if you look at one of the headlines, they missed on earnings even though they beat on revenue. So maybe that explains why they lost 5%. Take headlines and news articles with a grain of salt, but that can be something, if you're ever curious, can at least give you a good place to start when it comes to researching. And, the news always they love to make excuses and they love to make narratives for why a stock moves. And sometimes it just moves because it moved. So take that with a grain of salt, but that's another feature that's available. Now, what I really wanted to show you, which is really cool, and it's something that is kind of unique to Finviz. So you can see here this is what's called the sector, and this is the industry. So you can actually click here on the industry. This isn't always going to be like 100% correct as far as it might not get every competitor on there. And, it always depends on, like, every industry is kind of different, but some of them are really easy to define. Some of them aren't. Like when we talk about Apple, right? A lot of people would talk about their competitors as obviously Samsung's one, right, with the cell phones. But they also compete against Microsoft because of the computers. And you might be able to argue that they compete with even like any sort of electronics store like a Best Buy, or you could say they're competing with Facebook and Netflix because they're tech stocks. A company like Apple will be tougher to use this Finviz feature because they are dipping their toes and there's such a multi-industry type stock. You can't really narrow it down to one single thing. But, let's say we took some other stock. Let's look at the S&P 500 and see if there's one that's very obvious, right? Or let's go back to the Dow Jones. I would say, like a Visa with credit services. Well, that's obviously going to be only stocks that deal with credit cards. And so that can be kind of useful if we sort by market cap. And see, now this makes more sense because what else are you going to call Visa and MasterCard other than the credit card companies, right? Credit services. Boom, right there. So just from this cursory look, from a quick little click, you can see what industry is my stock in. And like I said, sometimes it won't be helpful, but sometimes it will. So you can see who are the big players, right? Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, American Express. You can look and you can kind of see a size comparison just by sorting by market cap. Well, I know that, if we added up some of these market caps, we can see that Visa makes up probably 50% or more. We could also see things like if you look at valuation, you can start to look at, well, which of these is cheapest based on earnings. So then you can sort on PE ratio. But, we're going to get a lot of stocks. Let's say I don't want the little stocks. I only want the big players. Well, then now you can do we can start to use these features, and now you're narrowing it down. Now you're getting a better picture, right? And you can do like quick industry comparisons without having to dig through it and go through like 5 different annual reports. And sometimes if you're trying to figure out on your own, like, well, who are their competitors, you might miss one, right? If you're not thinking. So this is all kind of ways that you can try to evaluate the industry a little bit, try to make some comparisons, and you can do it with all sorts of metrics, and you can see kind of what's going on. So keep in mind, like, sector, this is something I noticed, like the way Finviz defines sectors and the way some of the other websites do, they kind of all do it a little bit differently. I think there might be one more in like Nasdaq.com, I think, has an extra industry in here or extra sector that Finviz doesn't have. And keep in mind, like this industry stuff, it's all subjective. It's all coming from Finviz. So again, there might be something that's missed, but this can be a definite time saver when it comes to trying to look at industries. And so they also have something called the maps here. And this is where they separate the industries and the sectors. And they give you like a daily update on what happened in each industry or sector. And you can see like the bigger the square, that's basically meaning like the higher market cap that the stock has. So like they grouped Google and Facebook together in tech, which makes sense, right? Both websites, big traffic websites, right? And so you can see they grouped them together, and you can see what they did for the day, and you can see, green's up, red's down, and they do it. Looks like a brighter green means a higher gain. And like I said, they segment it based on market cap. So kind of a cool little feature. That's not one I use, but I thought I'd bring it up since we were talking about industry and sector. So now I'm going to go to the question, which I think a lot of you will find useful. If you're going to probably start running through some screens, and then you're probably going to run through this. So I censored this, as I always do for questions that I'm showing on the YouTube tutorials here. But Dylan says, "Hi, Andrew. I've been really diving into all of your YouTube content lately. I must say it is wonderful. I know you're still building the channel, and that shouldn't be a problem considering the content is invaluable." Thank you. Thank you, Dylan. After watching some of your videos, such as the Peter Lynch stock lists, one I started to play around with Finviz a little. At the moment, after putting it all the criteria one looks for a stock based on the rules by Graham Lynch, it seems impossible to find a stock, i.e. one that ticks all of the books of price to book and high EPS growth over the last 5 years, yada, yada, yada. I was just wondering, is this something that occurs quite often, and is just a case of sitting back, being patient, and checking every now and then until a stock does fit under the strict criteria, or am I going fundamentally wrong somewhere? Love the content and keep up the great work, Dylan. So fantastic question, and definitely something I ran into when I first started using Finviz. And so this is how I kind of solved this problem. I'm going to use one of the save screens that I talked about before. This is one that I definitely ran a lot. I'd say I'd probably still run it now. As one of the screens I'll pick whenever I'm trying to look at new stocks. So you have a list. You can see it's very small. You might have some of these stocks already in your portfolio. You might have some of these stocks where you've already analyzed them and already determined that you didn't want the stock. So you can see like it can be a problem if I'm only looking at these 8 stocks and I want to look at more. Something that I'm going to recommend to you is to be flexible with your parameters here. So for example, for this one, current ratio was something that I kind of added in the beginning, and I started to realize over time that it wasn't as crucial as before. What's nice about current ratio is it kind of keeps a lot of the low liquid, like bank stocks, insurance, these finance stocks that don't have a lot of good liquidity, then it kind of filters them out. But like if you just like even for like a Ben Graham or a Peter Lynch, when they talk about, well, you should try to get a stock with a PE under 15 and a PB under 2 or PB under 1, you have to understand that it's not always like cut and dry, and it's not always black and white. I think the idea, as long as the idea is there, and this is how I invest personally, as long as that theme of you're getting a lower PE than the average, you're getting a lower PB than the average, that's really what's crucial. As long as you're not, we're not talking about PBs in the 10s or PEs in the 100s, just because the stocks maybe like this, for example, a 26. Finviz doesn't have, they do. They have an under 25 option, right? Well, what is it really going to be that bad if you buy a stock at a PE of 26, right? So if we're having trouble with these stocks here, You just move up one metric. And so, let's say you are very strict about PE, but you're not okay with like a 28, but you'd be okay with a 26. So that's where you can kind of do some self-selection by yourself, and maybe now you'll have a bigger list, and you can start to do that with some of the other metrics as well. I know this is like the screen I used when I first started out, and then I started to realize as my approach evolved that it wasn't as important to get huge discounts on my stocks. I started to focus more on margin of safety with an emphasis on the safety rather than margin of safety with an emphasis on the margin. And I started to look for, like Buffett says, trying to find wonderful business at uh, at an okay price versus an okay business at a wonderful price. So then, I started to look at PS and PB under 3 instead of under 2. And so, something like a 2.82, oh, that might be a little pricey, a little too expensive. But, look at all these right here. There's like one that's right at a 2, a 2.02, a 2.04. I mean, these are all basically this 13 through 15, 2.05, 2.04, 2.02. Those are all basically PBs under 2s, but they just barely missed. So they're not showing up on the screen. But, as an intelligent human being, now we can play with these filters and we can look through our eyes, and it's going to take a little bit more time than just bam, 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 right? But, that's going to help us solve the problem of, well, I have such a small limited list. And so this is something that you can do, and you can change which ones you're going to be kind of more lenient on depending on the month or how difficult it is for you to find an idea, just all these sorts of things. So I guess that'd be like my big tip for if you're really struggling like Dylan is and the list is really, really small, don't be super, super strict. You can always bring a list of like 5 back out to like 25. And then you can start to kind of narrow down from there. Say like, oh, well, I don't like this VMI. I don't like this AEO. I don't like the ENS, but maybe I like the rest of these. And so then you can start to do some other kind of eye tests, right? Where it's like, okay, remember the PE thing? Well, I didn't like this JEC because it has a PE of 28. So you can kind of do that, and then you can start to narrow it down in that way, like a manual type way, and avoid that problem of not having a big enough list. And remember, when I talk about the Peter Lynch list or a Benjamin Graham list or something like that, it's a general guideline, something to get you started. But just because I had like this as my screen that I'm using every month, it's not like I'm gonna buy all 8 and that's just gonna be my portfolio, and then I'm only going to change as the screen changes. That's the absolute wrong way to use Finviz. You want to use it as a tool, not as a constrictor or not as your own portfolio. Use common sense. Use your stock analysis skills that I teach on the YouTube channel. Use those things, but use Finviz to narrow you down, so that way instead of just kind of picking names out of a hat, well, now you're getting a good narrowing down, and by using these sorts of filters, you're going to be getting stocks that are at better deals at the time as they go in and out of the filters. So use that, but don't be so super, super strict, black and white, where it's actually potentially going to hurt you rather than help you. So I got one last very helpful tool. It's called their portfolio tool. So again, let's go back and let's make a screen. Let's use my VTI screen, my value chart indicator screen that, I'm going to make it a little bit more lax. I know price to cash, they don't have like an under 15 or under 20, but, I'm okay with a PC at 12 or 13. So I'm going to narrow this. This one, that actually helps a lot too. So let's say if I sort by this, well, I don't like those, but, maybe I like these. What you can do now is you can create a portfolio of these. And what this does is it gives you something that you can track, and you can do like the whole idea of, at least when you're first starting out, of like making a paper portfolio, like kind of trading stocks, paper portfolio. I don't know, like if you've heard it before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't, like it's the idea of like pretending to buy stocks, writing them down on a piece of paper, and then that way you're kind of getting like stock market experience, quote quote, without having to risk any money. And so this is kind of like a way to do that. And what you can do here is you can create this portfolio, you can view and you can save it, and then you can go back later and see how it did. So I'll show you for an example. When I first started using this, I made a couple portfolios just kind of for fun. And so this is one I did. I guess we can open in Screener to see the exact screen that I did. No, okay, it looks like it saves it by ticker. So I did like some sort of screen where I was looking at like low price to book. It's like price to book below 2, and I had some other metrics in there. But basically it gave me a list of like 25 stocks. And you can see this was back in 1/18/13, so 5 years ago, right? But, you know, this is what would have happened had I made a portfolio of this screen. And then now that like a lot of time has passed, we can see how that portfolio actually would have done. So we're looking at like a 96% gain, which I don't know how that compares to the S&P, if that's good or bad. It'd be interesting to know, like, as of now. And y'all know how much I like Google Finance. I'm not shy to say that. But let's say 13. It was at like 15 and now it's at like 26, 27. What did I say? Was it 13, 15? I really can't remember. Yeah, 15. So it beat the S&P by 12, almost 20%. But, you know, that was over a 5-year period, so I don't know what that comes out to as far as the difference in 5 years. That might be a percentage point, might be a couple of percentage points. I don't know. But, you know, interesting to see that this portfolio of 25 stocks using the screen variables I was using a low PB, seems it did very well in that time period. So you can make your own screens. I did one. I guess I did one microcap stock, and this is why I don't buy microcap stocks. I just recently did a video on microcaps, so good reason to not buy. But anyway, that's another cool feature you can use if you're wanting to. Like the way I could see using it, right, is if you have a couple of different screen ideas, you could, let's say you have 3 different types of screens, 3 different types of criteria. You could make 3 different portfolios in Finviz and then come back 6 months later after you've bought stocks in each of the little screens and see, oh, well, actually, it seems like this one screen that I have has done well in the past and has a good chance of doing well in the future. So, you know, not supposed to be a definite thing. And like I said, with everything that goes with Finviz, take it all with a grain of salt. Understand that even this portfolio comparison I did, like here's another one. This is another Benjamin Graham one. But, you know, I did it. This one's like super, super concentrated. Instead of like 20 stocks, there's only 8. And so you can see, again, same time period, this one only gained 32%. So this one underperformed the S&P 500 by quite a bit. And it was because you can see all it takes is this one stock at losing 75%. Takes one stock, and that just killed everything. South Africa gold stock. So I would never run a screen like this today. I only invest in U.S. companies. You can see this one has like a China stock, China, South Africa stock, Bermuda. So that's the downside of investing in international stocks. That's the potential downside with having such a concentrated portfolio of only 8 stocks. But, you know, so you can use this as you go along your way to see if the screens that you're running are generally have good chances versus not. But again, take it with a grain of salt. Understand that, even with this back test that's been like 5 years, 96%, I would still consider it cherry picked, in the sense that, I would be curious to see how it does or how it did after a bear market. And I think that's important when you're talking about back tests. It's always important to have multiple entry points, multiple exit points. And it's just, there's a lot of factors that you have to put into with a back test. And so this is definitely far from scientific, but it can be a cool little feature that you can use to kind of track how your various screens are doing at the same time how your own portfolio is growing in real life. So those are the big things that you can use for Finviz. There's definitely other features you can use. Those were the major ones. I didn't go into the in-depth on the fundamentals or the financials or anything like that. There's a lot of tools for day traders, technical traders too. So if you have more time, definitely feel free to dig into that, or check out one of my other videos where I show in depth, step by step, how I'm using Finviz and what exact metrics and why that I'm using. So from here, you got 3 options as always. Number 1, you can subscribe to the channel. Click on the bell to get notifications every time I create a new video. Step number 2, subscribe to the email list over at stockmarketpdf.com. You'll get a free ebook and you'll get 1 daily email tip. 2 in the beginning because you get some intro emails. And your third option, check out the playlist I created on the channel called How to Analyze a Stock with Valuations. It's a very, very helpful resource. It's going to help you use Finviz to narrow down a stock list and show you like exactly what kind of financial metrics you can use and look for. And, be sure if you liked this video, if you like videos of this type, to leave a like, or, you can leave a comment or let me know how, what kind of feedback you have for me. I'd love getting that kind of stuff. And it's fun talking to you guys. So remember, stop working for money, put money to work for you. I will talk to you next time.